All right, good evening, everybody. So, our friend Eric Smith asked us a follow-up question to the video that we made earlier today, this morning, when it was still light outside, although you could kind of see when the lights come up. He wanted to know, can one be atheist and Jewish? Now, I'll tell you my answer, and I'll tell you the world's answer, and I'll tell you my answer. The world will tell you, yes, you can be atheist and Jewish. That was recently, I heard quoted in the name of Dennis Prager, yes, you can be atheist and Jewish, and so therefore Judaism is not a religion, and because you can be atheist and Jewish, and this and that. My answer is no. I disagree with those who make this assertion, and I base what I'm saying on Maimonides and the Code of Jewish Law and so forth. We tend to think, well, there are these two categories. You're either Jewish or Gentile, and within, even among Gentiles, there's different categories. There's a Ger Toshav, there's a Ben Noach, there's a Ovid of Azara, there's a Eved Ivri, there's these different categories as well, meaning there's somebody who keeps the 7 laws of Noah, there's somebody who worships idols, there's somebody who, in ancient times, there was such a thing as a Canaanite slave who was halfway between being Jewish and not being Jewish, and basically they kept all of they avoided all the prohibitions in the Torah, but they were not obligated to keep all of the positive commandments that are time bound. Certain ones they would, certain ones they wouldn't. And then when they went free, they became fully Jewish, if they went free. But that's neither here nor there. But that's not what we're talking about here anyway. The question is, can you be Jewish and an atheist? And my answer is no. You can be a non-Gentile and be atheist, but that doesn't mean you're Jewish. There's what I call a non-Gentile, or what the halacha would call Yisrael Mumar, or Apikoros. There's an idea of an apostate Jew. That they have all of the obligations of being a Jew, but none of the, let's say, privileges of being a Jew. And they're obligated to repent and come back and be Jewish and accept Judaism as their religion. But my feeling personally is that it's intellectually dishonest for a non-religious person, for a person who doesn't believe in the Jewish religion, to self-identify as a Jew. I believe that a religious person can say, by the standards of my religion, perhaps we could even say, unfortunately, so-and-so is halachically Jewish, is according to the Jewish law, they are obligated to keep, meaning what's the difference between a Jew and a Gentile in Jewish law? Is that a Jew has obligations that a Gentile does not have. That's what we were discussing in our previous video, to be part of the kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And if you actually listen to what I said in the video, if someone does not believe in Torah, does not believe that God gave the Torah, they cannot be considered chosen. Now, does that mean they are not Jewish? And so what it is that for certain laws, they are considered like a non-Jew. They don't really count for a minyan officially, for prayer, for the quorum for prayer, although they might count when it comes to, according to Moshe Feinstein, he has an interesting idea that they would count as, when it comes to what we call Davar Kedusha, when it comes to certain liturgical reasons, they would count for a minyan, but not for a prayer. It's a complicated scenario there. But their wine is not kosher, meaning if they touch on pasteurized wine, it's not kosher. If they pick it up, whatever, the wine is no longer kosher. Or if they make their own wine or whatever, it's not kosher. And for other things, well, they're can't be makabel, they can't give testimony in a Jewish court because they're not reliable witnesses. They cannot oversee kosher supervision. You come to an issue that a woman is allowed, a Jewish woman, a religious Jewish woman, can supervise kosher supervision in a restaurant or something, but not a non-religious Jewish person. So then they're, in my viewpoint, and there's even discussion, because some people say, well, are you allowed to be malva beribis? Are you allowed to collect interest? Because the Jewish law says from your fellow Jew, you're not allowed to collect interest. From a non-Jew, you could. You don't have to, but you're allowed to. And I heard the explanation being given by Reb David Gottlieb that there's nothing immoral about collecting interest on a loan any more than it's immoral to rent your car or to rent any non-monetary item that you have, rent a house or whatever it is. You're collecting rent on this item that's essentially being borrowed, that you own and is essentially being borrowed, and the owner collects rent. So there's nothing, nobody says that there's anything immoral about that, but everyone always, these Jews, the usurers, the money changers, this type of thing. But so then the question is, why does Judaism prohibit us from asking rent from your fellow Jew? And the idea is that there's a brotherhood among the Jewish people, and that if your brother wants to borrow your car, it's not that nice for you to say, well, you have to pay rent. It's one thing if he damages the car and he has to, he should put gas in the car, but it's, I wouldn't say it's immoral, but it's at least crass if your brother needs to borrow your car to say, well, can you could pay a fair market rental price for renting this car. That's not a normal thing, and so loaning money and collecting interest is like renting money, really. But if your brother wants to borrow some money, you shouldn't be collecting interest from your brother. And so we see each other as a brotherhood. But again, what kind of brotherhood is it? It's not a brotherhood of blood, but a brotherhood of faith, or is it? Which is it? And many people said to me, you can't collect ribbis from a non-religious Jew. But the actual halacha, according to most of the poskim who discuss this question, is no. There's no prohibition against collecting ribbis from a non-religious Jew, because they are not your brother. They're not part of the Klal Yisrael. They're not part of the Jewish people. And if meaning someone who's an atheist or a total heretic, they deny that God gave the Torah, even if they believe in God. So as far as these things go, and even when it comes with this counting to the minyan, it's a big chiddush that Rav Moshe makes. The simple, plain Shulchan Aruch is no. He doesn't. An atheist does not count for a minyan. Now the thing is, if a guy is coming to shul, dvarim shebelevim and dvarim, the Talmud says, words of the heart are not words. We, meaning as far as what we can give testimony to in a legal sense, if we're not mind readers, is what we're saying. If a person says he's an atheist, right? But then he comes to synagogue and he prays and he says the words of the prayer, at least for those moments while he's saying the prayer, he's not legally an atheist anymore. He's legally a believer, because he's contradicting his previous words, and so we assume he repented at least temporarily, and then we can accept him as part of the Jewish people for that time, as opposed to somebody who needs to convert. They have to go through a process of converting if they're not born Jewish before they can be part of the Jewish people. Although even that, it's not so simple. There is an idea that someone who just lives like a Jew, and we don't know what their ancestry is, is also really already part of the Jewish people without going through any formal conversion. But that's not normative, and it's not accepted, and it's not, and so that's something different. So we'll put that aside. It's not accepted. It's not normative. That's not what we do. And it's not even, forget about being normative accepted. It's not. It's such a minority halachic opinion that it's insignificant. And the thing is that really it's something that's very easy to fix. So you take three Jewish guys and they watch the person go in the mikveh and they're Jewish. Poof, they're Jewish. That's it. And it's not supposed to be that hard. It's just that the politicians who call themselves rabbis try to make it hard because it's the whole politics of the state of Israel and all this nonsense. In the old days, the reason we didn't do conversions was because you're going to get killed if you convert to Judaism. Nowadays, that's easy, and there's no laws against it, and yet, and even when it was illegal, they still did it, and people went into hiding, and it's whatever. So my answer is that an atheist who is of Jewish ancestry, his mother's Jewish, according to Jewish law, he is obligated to return to Judaism, but until he does so, he's in a separate category of a heretic and apostate. He's not Jewish until he goes back to Judaism. While during the time that he is an atheist, he's not Jewish. He's not Gentile and not Jewish. But even some people ask, well, what about this issue about ribis, about lending with usury with lending with interest? Actually, halachically, there is an opinion that you can lend with interest, and so that's the which is an interesting part of the story. So the only thing that is plain in the halacha is that if a marriage is made in this case kedusha of kedushin, if they have two valid witnesses witness a marriage ceremony that's done according to Jewish law, and one of the people involved is a Jewish heretic, in that case the marriage is in effect, meaning that if they want a divorce, they have to have a Jewish divorce. Not saying that that's a good thing to do, to marry somebody who's not really religious. It's certainly going to be frowned upon. It's certainly better to marry a religious convert than to marry a non-religious born Jew, except in the case of a priest who is not allowed to marry a convert. But in all the other cases, I would say it's better to marry a religious convert than to marry a secular Jew. But halachically, the marriage is valid. It's the kedushin is chal is the terminology we use. So, but basically, my opinion is there's a third category that's neither Jew nor Gentile, and that is the Jewish heretic, and that would be where the atheist falls. But practically speaking, like I said, there was one guy in our community. He moved away since then, and he raised his children as Orthodox Jews, and his wife was an Orthodox Jewess, and he became an atheist. And all the rabbis in their community were trying to break them up. And maybe they were right, but I was nice to them, and I felt like, I saw a lot of potential in this guy. And once in a while he'd come to shul, and it's interesting thing is that we had some guys who were very strict, that we don't have the people who are driving to shul on Shabbos have any honors in the shul, or maybe not even count for the minyan, and all these things. And then those guys said, yeah, daven for them, and they had him daven Musaf. He was a guy, he was a Talmud Chacham, he was, I think, even at Smicha, and he learned in Koilel and Lakewood, and then he became an atheist, he claims. But then I think now he's not considering himself an atheist anymore, but he suffered a lot in the Jewish community for declaring himself an atheist. And as usual, I spoke to his father about it, and his father said, if it would have happened to him that his wife became an atheist, he would divorce her. And these are complicated issues, because I don't know what I would do in this situation. I don't think I would divorce my wife if she wasn't religious anymore. I would try to find some kind of compromise, and is it right? Is it wrong? I think Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. Everybody has to figure out their own path in life, and so I love my wife very much. I mean, I know she's not going to become an atheist. I'm pretty sure, 99.9999% sure. You never know, what could happen to a person. We know the story with the Kohen Gadol, who, in the end of his life became a Sadducee, and that's sad, you see. But all his life he was a pious, holy man, and then just the end of his life he went the wrong way. And the same thing, Acher, Elisha ben Avuya, we still quote him in Pirkei Avos, and yet he became Acher. So you never know. But the thing is, we see Reb Meir, he could not give up his respect and admiration of Reb Elisha ben Avuya. And Acher told him, you're going to leave the Tchum Shabbos. Meaning Acher was sitting on a donkey on Shabbos, and Reb Meir was following him, and they were talking and learning, and he was, so you never know, but these things are complicated. Life is complicated, and so the thing is that I was there. Our Rav was away, and I'm sure the Rav would do the same thing. Let him down with them, and we would give him an aliyah, everything. It was part of the Kehillah. So these types of things are complicated, It's everybody has to find the right path in life, and not it's not a one size fits all situation. Everybody has their own path in life. You can't expect. I mean, I'll be honest. As much as I love Yiddishkeit, as much as I love Judaism, I recognize that this path doesn't work for everybody. And as much as it works for me, I recognize it doesn't work for everybody else. For a lot of people it works, and even for a lot of people who are very, very religious, I don't know how much it's working for them. That's the other part of the story. Is it really working for you? I don't know. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think. Almost everybody you ask, most rabbis you ask, are going to say, yes, you could be an atheist Jew, but I'm going to say no. First of all, you shouldn't be an atheist Jew. I think that a lot of people agree. But my view, and I think a lot of people agree with me, especially now, is that Judaism is a religion and not a race. And, all right, we say, yes, so-and-so is Jewish and this and that, but, like, if someone is really, like, has a hatred for Judaism, like, that's the difference with this guy. He was raising his kids from, you know, but, so we look at that a little differently. You know, we're going to judge you by your actions and not by your theology right now. Because your actions are kind of pointing to the idea that you really do believe in God, and you're just, and there's no atheist in a foxhole, and you're trying to fool yourself by claiming that you're an atheist when you're not really an atheist. And that's the thing with probably most atheists. Are just trying to fool themselves to think that they're atheists, you know, or like I think about Stephen Greer, who is like, he's like a Navi, you know, from the Nevi'im Masoilim. He's a person who is, you know, had tremendous spiritual revelations in his life. Whether, I'm not saying that they're Torah true, his revelations, but a lot of them are. But he's a person who was raised as a devout atheist. And he, you know, like they say, you know, not only he didn't believe in God, he believed there was no God, right? And yet, at least that's how he was raised. And then he started, you know, practicing Eastern meditation and all these things. And he had a close encounter with extraterrestrial beings that revealed to him the truth of the one God. I mean, that's an incredible story. So, and so, whatever it is, even if there's falsehood in that, but he's a figure, you know, like a Joseph Smith or a Muhammad, you know, who certainly there's something there that was out of the ordinary. He wasn't a Navi like our Nevi'im. And neither was Joseph Smith, and neither was Muhammad. But these people experienced something beyond this world and were given revelations, even though there might be false revelations. That's the fascinating thing, though, is with, you know, there is clear falsehood in LDS and Mormonism. Clear falsehood. But it's also pretty clear that Joseph Smith has some kind of an otherworldly encounter. And he had a lot of siyata d'shmaya that his movement spread. Muhammad also has some clear falsehood, not as bad as the falsehood of Mormonism, theologically speaking, but in other aspects. That's the strange thing, you know. Whereas in Mormonism, it's a little different. But they also have violence in Mormonism and so forth. And then you have, but you can't compare that to our Nevi'im, who were Torah true Nevi'im. These were clearly false prophets, but they were nonetheless prophets. You know, they were prophets who received a false prophecy, but they weren't just faking it. You know, the way L. Ron Hubbard just made it up. You know, it's pretty obvious that L. Ron Hubbard just made up nonsense. You know, and he just made it up, and I don't think Joseph Smith just made it up. I think he had some kind of a close encounter, and he received something, but that something that he received had a lot of falsehood in it, and doesn't mean that it's pure evil. Like that's the dichotomy that, you know, the evangelical Christians will have, is that anything that's not of Christ is pure evil, you know. And the Jewish approach, everything comes from God, evil comes from God. That's what the Bible says. I mean, I was talking to the pastor yesterday, who works for me, and Monday we were talking about this, but what does Isaiah 45 say? God, that God forms light and creates darkness. And he makes peace and creates evil, the evil, with a definitive article. And I know in our liturgy we change it to Avaris Hakol, but the scripture actually says that God creates evil. And so it's not the dichotomy of good and evil the way that Western Christianity sees it. And even to a certain point, Eastern Christianity doesn't see it in the same way that Western Christianity sees it. Meaning the Protestant churches were very much influenced by the Catholic churches, the Roman churches that they came from. Even as much as they want to fight against them. And the Eastern churches had a different view of a lot of these things, theologically speaking. And people don't recognize, the sources of where these ideas come from. Not to say that the Eastern churches don't recognize that there's good and evil, and there's Satan, this and that, and they have a lot of these ideas of the fall of Satan that don't exist in Judaism. The mythology of the fall of Lucifer and all these things that, even though they come from Isaiah, but it's a homiletical approach to Isaiah, it's not what Isaiah is saying. As opposed to here, in Isaiah 45, Isaiah is saying God creates evil. That's what Isaiah clearly says. Now, of course, you can argue what does evil mean, and it doesn't necessarily mean it could translate as bad also, but but people, who's the Reform rabbi who had the book, Why Do Good Things Happen to Bad People? It was named Kula, I think, and he said really heresy in that, like Zoroastrian heresy, and it's not the Jewish idea. And I understand he suffered a lot, and he's trying to find peace in his life, but it's not what that's not what our Bible says. And the fact that Isaiah 45 is talking about Cyrus, who was a Zoroastrian. He was Persian, so what religion would he have followed? Zoroastrianism. And he's trying to teach him that this dualism is not true, that there's really only one God, and that one God does everything. So, all right, half hour already. We should have taken 5 minutes. But that's my answer. My answer is you're really not a Jew if you're an atheist until you repent. You don't have to convert, although it's still good to go to the mikveh when you do tshuva. The circumcision should have been done already, right? And if that wasn't done, you have to circumcise. But it's not l'shem gerus, and there's a difference between the bris of the born Jew and the bris of the ger. But still, what did we say about in the previous video about Piasetzner Rebbe? He when he was 40 years old, he decided he wanted to convert to Judaism. That's how we should look at it. We should ask ourselves, every religious Jew should ask themselves, if I found out tomorrow that I was not Jewish, would I convert? Some people might say no. Most people say maybe I'll do a few things first and then I'll convert. But it's a big problem if your answer is no, or I got to think about it. So what are you doing? Why are you doing all this stuff that you really don't want to be doing? I remember Rabbi Weinberger told us that he had such a story by him that there was a bacher from the yeshiva. He found out he wasn't Jewish, and the night before, and they said, "All right, we're going to take you to the mikveh tomorrow. We're going to take care of it." And the night before he's going to the mikveh, he said, I have to stay at the rabbi's house. I don't know what I'm gonna do this one night that I'm not Jewish. And he could do whatever he wants. He has a free night. He has a hall pass, and he didn't want to. And that's how we should look at. That's how much we should love Judaism. If we're religious Jews, the thing is so much of a stone. But that's how we're supposed to look at Judaism. That we, even if we weren't Jewish, we should want to live this life, and we should love it so much. And and the thing is, and I think a lot of the things is that we see it as that, well, all these rabbis or the Torah or whatever doesn't want us to have fun, and I don't believe that. And then maybe other people disagree with me, but I personally believe that the Sefer Chinuch talks about the emotional need to have fun. And so if you are engaging in some fun activity, but you do it in a Jewish way, first of all, you're following halacha while you're doing it. But also, you're thinking about God while you're having fun. You're thanking God for this. I give the example. I know a lot of people enjoy sports, and I'm not a sports guy. I can't stand sports. But and then the same thing is like all the rabbis who say, that sports, they're all sports fans, and then they say, but the movies, that's treif. But I love movies. I'm a movie guy, and as much as I'm very uncomfortable with the people who make the movies, and I see like Rabbi Bart Sadok also, he's a big movie guy, and again, I'm not engaged in this even every day, I'll be honest, I don't have a regular TV, but I have a TV set, and I have the Roku box that's connected to the internet, and I can watch Netflix and Hulu and YouTube and things, and usually, to be honest, and a lot of the free channels, and it's great, and the stuff I enjoy, and to be honest, I put it on, and I fall asleep, and that's it, and I don't really, I'd much rather spend an hour, if I don't really have an hour, listening to a lecture from Rabbi Bart Sadok or something, than to actually sit down and watch a movie that I enjoy. It makes me feel good, but the thing is, when I do, I have to recognize this is a gift from God. And, of course, to be careful, to only watch clean movies. And if you mess up, you do tshuva on that. But, but it's, and the thing is, I'll be honest, a lot of times maybe I'm watching a movie, but I'm also looking at my phone and learning a Mishnah. Maybe I'm watching the movie and also learning a Black Gemara at the same time. That's kind of the way I do things. But then I remember Rabbi Weinberger, he said, one of his kids wanted to see the movie Space Jam. He wanted to go to Bubby and Zadie's house and watch Space Jam. Or if it wasn't Bubby and Zadie's house, he wanted to go to his friend's house and go watch a baseball game or something. I don't know, whatever it was. So Rabbi Weinberger said, all right, I'm going to go with you. We're going to watch this movie, but like we're going to, what kind of Musar lesson can we get out of this movie? And I remember Rabbi Weinberger would watch movies with us. He would once a year, the kids, they would pick a movie, and we would watch it with him, and he would take some kind of a Musar lesson out of the movie. I remember we watched The Sixth Sense and we watched The Matrix. I didn't like The Matrix. The Sixth Sense I liked, but he had a whole Musar thing about, the Ariyah Kodesh and Kabbalah and all these different inyanim. I remember they watched Bean, but I wasn't there in that class, but I remember, But once a year, that's what he would do. Interesting approach that he had. And that was his opportunity to see these, because he didn't have any of these Kalim and Kalim Shoinim, so he couldn't see the movies. But he heard about a movie, so The Matrix. Everybody's talking about The Matrix. He wanted to see what's this all about, and I know a lot of a lot of rabbis, they like to use this as a as a musar tool. A lot of rabbis, Star Wars, all these people, they use them, and that's where they find meaning in their life and so forth. And so. And it's interesting because one of my coworkers yesterday was criticizing me. He said, like I do I'll do a Star Wars themed marriage or something, wedding ceremony or something, and like you're making a mockery of the sacrament of marriage. And the thing is, he's a Catholic deacon, and he says, he does funerals for non-Catholics a lot. They call on him, especially when there's kids involved. There was a suicide recently, and they called on him. The kid wasn't Catholic, but they called on him to come and minister to these kids, and he's good at that, and it's the same to me. If I'm ministering to people where they are, and if they find meaning from Star Wars or something, I understand that. Oh, there's a skunk. Drove right over it. Now it stinks. It's not really a bad smell, the skunk smell, to be honest. It's one thing when they spray you, but it's probably gonna follow me for a while. Let's maybe do the cold air. So 36 minutes already. Nobody's gonna watch this. What am I doing? And the reason why I say that you cannot be an atheist Jew is because I think this idea of and I talked about this morning with the Messianic Jews and this and that. The fact that they're atheist Jews, quote unquote, people who identify as atheist Jews, and that they're accepted, and yet the Messianics are not accepted, is a travesty. In my mind, it depends on the type of Messianic. I subscribe to Usher Mesa's view on the Messianics, that there is such a thing as an Orthodox Messianic, somebody they put on tefillin and they daven 3 times a day. They keep halacha, and they have a problematic theology. And this is not just me. It was a big Dayan, Talmud of Samarov. I'm not going to mention his name because people are going to harass him about this. But we had this question in our community. There's a particular individual in the community who is totally frum, very serious about Yiddishkeit. But he said, he has a havamina, and maybe such a thing. So all the Rabbanim said he's chutz l'machane, and he was talking, but derech safek, he's talking of it that he has a doubt, maybe is such a thing. Not that he believes, but he said maybe is such a, he's not sure, and that's the ironic thing, that the modern Orthodox rabbis and the Litvisher rabbis were like, this is apikorsis, there's no question, and he lost his job. He was working in hashgacha. We were talking about that, and then we talked to, and he can't work in hashgacha anymore because of this ideology that he has. And I talked to the Rabbi Machshir about this with Chassidish Yid, but I was like, personally, I think I disagree, but I understand that you have your standards with this particular hashgacha. So then we talked. This Bocher went and talked to a Chassidish Kanoish Dayan, a very verfrumte Dayan, who to him Satmar is not frum enough. He's a Talmud of Samarov, very frum person, and he said the belief is a false belief, but doesn't make an apikoros. If you keep Shabbos and you don't worship Oiseish, you just believe maybe he's Mashiach and this and that, and and we accept him in Arminianism. We don't chase him away, and so I think I'm being consistent there. But to me, a person like this who is orthoprax and has some problem in their orthodoxy, we have to go by what we see. And so we're not making theology tests necessarily. Do we know what God is anyway? You know, I mean, we know what he isn't more, and that's our issue more with Christianity, is that the things that they claim about God is generally what we claim that God is not. But to say we know, there are different views within Judaism. It's not cut and dry. But to say that there's no God, there's no place in Judaism for what we call today atheism. Now, if you go back to ancient Rome, when the word atheism was invented, when they said atheists, they called the Christians and the Jews atheists because they had an invisible God. And so if you couldn't have that also shows that the early Christians did not have statues or anything like this. But in ancient Rome, Jews and Christians were called atheists because the God that they worshipped was invisible. So in that sense, yes, you could be an atheist and a Jew, but only in the sense that the God we believe in is invisible, and we don't have these. And in a sense, also our concept of God is not the concept of gods, and so our God is, we talk about Yesh Ma'ayin, that God creates something from nothing, and so that nothingness is God, that Ein Sof. It's the one that has no end, but also has no beginning. His existence is, on the one hand, the Rambam says the existence of God is more true than any other existence that there is. But in the realm of our existence, the type of existence that we have, God, does he have or does he not have? He doesn't have a corporeal existence the way we have. That's how our theology understands it. Again, all these things, these are philosophical issues, but so you want to discuss maybe this aspect of what does it mean. I mean, we don't believe God is the guy in the Gary Larson. I heard Gary Larson's coming out of retirement, but we don't see God as the guy in the Gary Larson cartoons who's making snakes. He ran out of clay and whatever, and that's not our God, But on the other hand, our God is a personal God. It's not this just unknowable force. You can have a relationship with God. God can be your best friend. And should be your best friend. And that's, a biblical expression of God. And that's the difference between biblical religion and Islam. They're both Abrahamic, but the biblical religions have, the Muslims are like, well, the Bible talks about parts of a woman's body and things like that, and what's this all about? And the thing is, that's from an aspect of it's a metaphor for something deeper, and they also have metaphors in Islam. But this the same thing though. The Mormons, they, are very upset by some of the language that we have in our scripture, and even though they print it in their Bibles, they don't read it. And I remember my wife grew up Mormon, and she said, the kids, they would open up Shir Shirim and they would giggle and this and that, and then she told other kids, she said, I think there's something deeper here that we're missing. I mean, and Joseph Smith didn't get it. we mentioned Joseph Smith earlier. He didn't get it. He didn't get it. But, Rabbi Akiva said, Shir Kodesh Kodashim. So, it's Holy of Holies. But we recognize that we're not talking in the physical sense, but rather in the metaphorical sense. But God's supposed to be our best friend, and we're supposed to talk to God like we talk to our best friend. That's what Nachman Breslover says. So it's not like just karma or something. It's not some force that just has, it's not the force in Star Wars, like in Star Wars, the force doesn't have, a personality. And God, at least how God relates to us as human beings, relates to us in a way that has personality. Have a personal relationship with God. And we don't need Jesus to do it. We can have a personal relationship with, what the Christians would call God the Father, right? And again, that's a misnomer, and but we call God Father. We do call God Father, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Shebashamayim. We do, and we have all these different relationships with God, as a father, as a king, as a lover, as a husband. These are our relationships with God, and they're manifold. All right, I want to listen to Levin a little bit, because especially after all the negative press I heard, I want to hear what Levin has to say, and I missed the first half hour. Thank you for listening, guys and girls, and whoever's listening, whatever it is, whatever is listening. Good night, whatever you are. That's what Zachary used to say. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and I'm sorry, I planned to make a 5-minute video, and it went on for 10 times as long, so it is what it is. Alright, take care.